Good to go? Okay. All right, welcome everybody to the public meeting for the water rights adjudication in the Spanish Fork Mapleton Subdivision. Just a reminder for folks waiting to sign in, we will make those sign-in sheets available later if you want to fill in. And we do have some additional seating over here on my right. This meeting is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube page for your viewing pleasure if it's that interesting that you want to watch it again. I do have a handful of staff here. I ask that you hold your questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. That's why we brought a number of people with us. Please hold your questions to the end. We will have a Q&A session at the end. And then myself and my staff will stick around as long as we need to tonight, either till we answer all the questions or the facility kicks us out. We'll stick around. We'll try to answer your questions as best we can. And we also have a few members from the Attorney General's office with us tonight if you have questions that would better be directed toward them. So if I haven't said already, my name is Chase McDonald. I am the Assistant State Engineer over the Adjudication Program at the Division of Water Rights. Something to keep in mind as we go through this presentation, the Division of Water Rights is the Office of the State Engineer. So if I use those two terms, they basically mean the same thing, okay? But we are talking specifically tonight about the Spanish Fork Mapleton Subdivision, which is Area 51, Book 8. So what we're going to talk about tonight, I'm sure one of the first questions everybody has is, why did I receive a summons? So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about what is a water right. We'll talk about what the adjudication is. We'll talk about the adjudication process and our anticipated timeline. And then, like I said, we'll be available for questions. And I will give a short website tour at the end of the presentation. All of these slides that you see, this presentation is already available on our website. So if you want to take pictures of the slides, you're more than welcome to, but I will show you how to access these toward the end of the meeting if you'd prefer that. So let's get into it. Why did I receive a summons? So we'll talk more about what the adjudication is in a minute, but the adjudication process, we need it to be comprehensive. We want to make sure that everybody who either has a water right on our records or who might have a water right that they need to file a claim on, we need to make sure that all those people are included in this process. So the vast majority of people who received a summons in this case do not have a water right. But that summons, and I do apologize for the wording of the summons, I know it's intimidating to people, that we are required to send that by law as part of this process, okay? We're not trying to be scary. And a lot of people ask, I received this summons, when is my court date? Pretty much none of these go to court. I don't know of any that have actually gone to court. And that would be through an objection process beyond what we're talking about here tonight. But so that summons, in order to make this adjudication comprehensive, we send it to all water right owners of record on the state engineer's records, as well as all property owners within the subdivision boundary. So, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but we have about 700 water rights on our records in this area. But we had to also send summons to just shy of 18,000 property owners. Okay, so that's why I say, like, the vast majority of people who receive this summons don't have a water right. If you don't have a water right, you don't need to participate in this process. We'll talk more about that later. That summons, you may have seen it. It's also published in the local newspaper. Like I said, we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to let everybody know what we're doing, and it's required by law. So moving on, what is a water right? We'll talk a little bit more about the history in a couple of slides, but the most foundational concept in Utah water law is that the water was declared property of the public. So it's a finite resource. It's a very valuable resource. And so it's owned by the public. It's owned by the people. A water right gives somebody the right to divert and beneficially use that water. Okay? So these water rights, they have different defining elements, such as the nature of beneficial use. In statute, it says that beneficial use is the measure and limit of a water right. And so the nature of use, that could be irrigation, stock watering, domestic. There's a whole laundry list of natures of beneficial use. But that's part of the water right. The priority date, Utah water law is governed by the doctrine of prior appropriation, which means first in time, first in right. So if you appropriated your water before somebody else and there's a shortage, it's distributed by priority. So that priority date means the date that that water was first put to beneficial use. Okay. So then we also define a quantity of water that can either be by a flow rate in cubic feet per second or a volume, and we use the term acre feet for that. And essentially it's an acre of ground, put a foot of water on it, that's an acre foot. And then there's a specified point of diversion in source water. The point of diversion is where the water is diverted from its natural source to be put to beneficial use. So think of a well, a spring box, head gate, things like that. And then there's also a defined place of beneficial use. So all of those attributes combine together into a water right. And the state engineer's office is tasked with managing and administering water rights. So it's also really important to talk about, especially in this area, what a water right is not. So a water right is not a share in an irrigation company or water provided by a municipality. Okay, I think most of the people in this area receive water from irrigation companies. And if you have a share in an irrigation company, the irrigation company owns the water rights, and you have a share that entitles you to use a portion of their water right. Okay? So let's talk more about that. Irrigation shares and share statements. Share statements is just if it's a term we use in our office for when somebody provides us with a share of stock, we generate a share statement. It's just a document. So don't focus too much on that. But we're talking about irrigation shares. As I said, if your right is based on ownership of shares in an irrigation company, you don't need to file a water user's claim. We will work with the irrigation company. We will adjudicate their portfolio of water rights. They will participate on your behalf. Okay, that's one of the main questions we get. And in this area, tons of people have irrigation shares in companies like Strawberry Water Users Association, Springville Irrigation Company, Strawberry Highline Canal, Spanish Fork South Irrigation Company. And this area is a little bit unique because, as I'll talk about in a second, we only include a water right in the adjudication if the point of diversion is within the subdivision boundary. So a lot of those irrigation companies have already been adjudicated in different areas because their points of diversion are up Spanish Fork Canyon, for example, or for Springville in the Hobble Creek area. So if you are an irrigation company, one thing that may be beneficial is reach out to your shareholders and say, hey, we are aware of the adjudication. We will be filing water user claims. And so we've got it covered. You know, that could be really beneficial to give a little comfort to your shareholders, let them know that you're on top of it. And this list right here, this is not exhaustive. There's a lot more irrigation companies that service this area than what's on that list. And so, like I said, if your only source of water is from a municipality like Mapleton City or Spanish Fork City, and or from irrigation shares. So if all your water comes from a municipality or from shares you own in an irrigation company, you most likely do not have a water right. Most people that have a water right know that they have a water right because they maintain infrastructure, like they maintain a well or something like that. If you have any question about whether you have a water right or not, contact us and we'll help you work through that. And we'll try to answer your questions. But as I said, just to repeat, if your only source of water is from a municipality or an irrigation company, you probably don't have a water right, and you probably don't need to participate in this process. Okay? So now let's talk about what is a general adjudication. So in its broadest sense, it's just an action in a district court. A general adjudication is just a special type of court case. And because state law establishes that the judicial branch has the authority to determine water rights. It incorporates a special role for the state engineer's office to go out and take claims, evaluate those claims, and make a recommendation to the court, which we'll talk through. And it's so the judicial branch, the court determines those water rights. That's a legal term, determines. And this process will culminate in what's called a proposed determination that we'll file with the court. I'll talk through the whole process. We'll get there. But the general adjudication joins and binds all water users and the state engineer. That's why we make it comprehensive. That's why we send out so many summons, right? The entire process is governed by Utah law. It's Utah Code Title 73, Chapter 4. Title 73 covers Utah water law in general. Chapter 4 is specifically the adjudication process. And as I've said, the general adjudication determines the nature and extent of all existing rights within a drainage. That map that you see there, that is all of the different general adjudications across the state. As you can see, the entire state is under an active, or was at one time under an active adjudication. And some of these date back to the 1920s. So they've been going on a long time. This idea of adjudication was established back when, shortly after Utah became a state, which we'll talk about now. So why do we conduct general adjudications? To give you a little bit of history, a little bit of background knowledge on this, Utah became a state in 1896, but the pioneers got to the Salt Lake Valley and began developing water resources and other resources in 1847. So there was about 50 years of development between the time Utah was settled and when it became a state. And when Utah became a state and they ratified the Constitution, there was only one sentence that pertained to water rights, and it's up there on the screen. I'll read it out loud for those that can't see it. Article 17 of the Utah Constitution says, all existing rights to the use of any of the waters in this state for any useful or beneficial purpose are hereby recognized and confirmed. Notice it didn't say defined, it didn't say quantified. It essentially said if you're using water now, before these water laws came into effect, you'll be grandfathered in, we'll recognize those rights. And they created the adjudication program as a means to bring those rights onto the record and quantify them, okay? So that's that first bullet point, that we conduct general adjudications to bring all claims and all water rights onto the permanent record. So someone might ask, what do you mean you don't have all of them on the permanent record? And it's like I talked about, those pre-statutory uses were grandfathered in, and so they're pre-statutory claims. We use the terms diligence claims because in 1903, they passed a law that any surface source, any appropriation of a water right, meaning any new water right on a surface source after 1903 had to be filed through the state engineer's office. You had to file an application to appropriate, okay? So that was for surface water. Then in 1935, it was expanded to include groundwater sources. So before 1935, if you had a groundwater source, you could have just drilled a well and that water right was grandfathered in, okay? And as I said, this adjudication process was meant to bring those on the record. Another thing we look at with general adjudications is Federal Reserve rights. And what that is, the Winters Doctrine was a court case that established that when the federal government sets aside a land reservation, it could be an Indian reservation, national park, national forest, military installation, things like that, it implicitly set aside sufficient water to meet the purposes of that reservation. And so a lot of these Federal Reserve rights, the federal government set land aside, and the court case said it implicitly set aside sufficient water to meet those needs, but those were never defined. They were never brought on the record. So that's something else we do through the adjudication. The McCarran Amendment there, just for law nerds who want to know all the little details, the McCarran Amendment allows the federal government to waive sovereign immunity and take part in state-based adjudications. And we do all this for increased clarity to the water rights picture. So we know if the source is over appropriated or if there's still water available. That second to last bullet point is the one that scares everybody. We do remove and reduce water rights which have been wholly or partially forfeited through non-use. We'll talk about that more later, but state statute, state law does say that if a water right or a portion of a water right has not been put to beneficial use for a period of 7 years, it may be subject to forfeiture. So, like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later. That's where a lot of the questions we receive come from. And at the end of this process, the final product is we will put together our proposal to the court. The court will go through an objection process for people who object to what we recommended, and then we'll get a decree from the court on those water rights. And so now talking specifically about Spanish Fork Mapleton. So this is the subdivision boundary. It does go up Spanish Fork Canyon a little bit. It does include most of the Spanish Fork area up into Mapleton. Excuse me. But the Spanish Fork Mapleton subdivision is part of the larger Utah Lake Jordan River general adjudication. Utah Code 7341, that number is not important to all of you, but state law allows the state engineer to divide and subdivide general adjudication areas into more manageable, smaller pieces. And so that's what we've done here. We created the Spanish Fork Mapleton subdivision that we will be adjudicating just this subdivision. And so, as I said earlier, a water right will be evaluated as part of this subdivision if the point of diversion is within the subdivision, okay? And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but there's some statistics in the top right corner there. We have around 700 water rights of record in this area, but because we need to be comprehensive and we notify all landowners as well, we send almost 18,000 mailings to property owners. Now let's get into the adjudication process itself. This graphic we put together to try to help people visualize what the process looks like. As I've mentioned a couple times, this is essentially Utah Code Title I'm blanking 73, Chapter 4 in a graphic. Okay, we've broken it down into 3 different phases. The first phase, and I'll give a broad overview, and then we'll jump into each one in a little more detail. But the first phase is where we are now. The petition we'll talk about on the next slide. The notice of commencement you may have seen in the newspaper. The summons is what brought you all here. We're at step 4, the public meeting. And then the end of this phase, which we'll talk about later, is a notice to file claims that we will mail out to everybody again. So for better or worse, we'll be sending you another mailing, some more information. But that's the end of phase 1. Phase 2 is the list of unclaimed rights and the final summons. And then phase 3, we evaluate those claims, put together that book I mentioned, the proposed determination, submit that to the court. Each of these phases will be right back out here doing another public meeting, giving you a status update, letting you know what's next, okay? So let's talk a little bit more about phase 1. So I'm gonna touch on the petition a little bit, give you a little bit more history. So the Utah Lake Jordan River general adjudication stems from a court case that was called, it was Salt Lake City versus Tamar Anderson and others. In that court case, Spanish Fork Westfield Irrigation Company and some others petitioned the Third District Court to handle all proceedings of that case in a general adjudication. So basically there was a dispute over water, and a bunch of people petitioned the court and said, just adjudicate the whole area and let's get this done. At the time, the petitions were originally denied by the district court. It made it up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court went back to the district court and said, you are going to adjudicate this. And so the Supreme Court overruled their decision and mandated that they proceed with the adjudication. So in 1944, Judge C.E. Henderson ordered an adjudication of all the rights to the use of waters of Utah Lake and Jordan River in Utah and Salt Lake counties. Then as time went on, the state engineer petitioned the court and said, hey, we need a little more clarity. Will you clarify the scope of this adjudication? So then in 1972, that court order was amended by Judge Frank Wilkins, and it expanded the scope essentially to include not just Utah and Salt Lake counties, but Utah, Salt Lake, Davis, Summit, Wasatch, Sanpete, and Juab counties. So it made it cover the entire hydrologic system. Okay, and that amended order also directed the state engineer to prepare a proposed determination as provided in Chapter 4, Title 73 of Utah Code. So that's what brought us here. And then, like I said, we've done the notice. You've all received the summons, doing this public meeting. So the next step, we will be sending out the notice to file claims. That'll be in a month. That will be July 10th. We'll send a notice to file claims. That will also go to all water right owners and all landowners. And the point behind that is there may be some of these pre-statutory water rights that are not on our records. So we need to make sure that we include everybody that could potentially have a claim to one of those pre-statutory water rights. So what do those claims look like? This is a sample water users claim. The one in the foreground is what would be sent to a water right of record at the state engineer's office. So if we have, or for every water right of record we have, we will send a pre-filled water users claim that has all the information that we have on record. We'll populate a water users claim and send it to the owner on our records, okay? Anyone who is just a property owner, not a water right owner of record, will receive the one in the background that is, it's just blank, okay? So you receive a notice to file claims with a blank claim saying, hey, if you have a water right that you would like to claim, here's a form to fill it out, tell us what it is. And it's very, very important. If you take nothing away from this meeting, please take this. If you have a water right, whether it's on the record or not on the record, you need to file a claim. Once the adjudication process completes, and actually after phase 2, basically, if you have a pre-statutory water right that is not on our records and you do not file a claim on that, you may forever be barred from asserting that claim. Okay, so it's very, very important. If you take nothing else away from this, if you have a water right, please file your claim. If you have a water right that is on the records, same thing, you still need to file your claim, okay? You can either file them with our office, the state engineer's office, or the district court. Most people find it easier to file it with us, and we will file it on your behalf to the district court. You can file it with both of us if you want to. And we understand that this process is complicated. That's why we have 3 public meetings. That's why we're out here trying to talk you through it. So we encourage you, if you have questions as you're filling out your claims, let us know. Call us. We're more than happy to help you fill them out. We're going to have some help sessions that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but we are more than willing to help you fill out these claims, okay? I've already touched on that one. State engineer will file your claim with the court as a courtesy. The second to last bullet point, claims are only required on perfected rights. That means certificated rights, decreed rights, and diligence claims. If you don't worry too much about that. If you have a water right and you're wondering if you need to file a claim or not, if you're wondering whether it's perfected or not, call us and we'll help you through that. Essentially, what that means is if it's an approved application to appropriate that does not have proof filed on it and has not received a certificate, we're not going to adjudicate it because the process, like you're still working on developing that project. But if you have any questions, just give us a call. And again, to touch on this, irrigation company shareholders are not required to file a claim as long as the company files their claims, okay? Another question we get a lot is, how do I actually file my water user claim with the state engineer? So I added this slide just for this public meeting because we've gotten questions about it in the past. But one thing to remember, we send you these pre-filled claims if you're a water right owner of record. We send it to you as a courtesy. We're not required by law to do that, but we figure, hey, if we're going to tell you to file a claim, we might as well send you the claim and make it easy on you. But keep in mind, once you sign that and send it to us, that is your claim. Okay, so make sure you read it. Make sure you understand what's on there. If you have questions, let us know. But once you sign that, even though we send it to you, once you sign it, you're asserting that that is your claim. And so if you think something on there is incorrect, you can correct it on there. You can just, I mean, you can make it your own. You can cross things out and write in what you want and make sure that it is the claim that you want to submit. Make sure you sign and date it, and then file it with our office. You can either mail it to that address, email it to waterrights_adjudication@utah.gov. You can hand deliver it to our office, any Division of Water Rights office. The closest one for you all is in Salt Lake City, or you can come to this help session. And so we have one scheduled now. We're probably going to schedule a second, but that help session, again, this is not something required by law. This is something we're doing as a courtesy to try to help you out. But what we're going to do, we booked a venue. We're going to send staff out with computers and a printer, and we'll help you fill out your claims, and we can print your claim off. You can sign it there. We'll make a copy. You take a copy, we'll take a copy, and that meets the requirement to file your claim. We will take that claim and consider it filed at that point. The help session information, when we send that notice to file claims, it will have the dates, times, and locations for that. So we'll get that information to you. So after that, oh, one thing I don't know if I touched on back here, that notice to file claims, this information will be in there, but by the time we send that notice, you have 90 days to file that claim. Okay, so make sure you get it in, make sure you get it filed by that claim filing deadline. And we'll give you those tentative dates here. But yeah, that's important to know as well. So phase 2 is the list of unclaimed rights. And I won't go into as much depth with these. We'll have more public meetings for these. But the list of unclaimed rights, essentially what we do is we make a list of all of our water rights of record. We look at all the claims we received. We match up the claims to the water rights of record. And any water rights on our records that did not receive a claim will go on this list of unclaimed rights. And we will file that list with the court. And once we file it with the court, well, when we file it with the court, we will also send out notice to all water right holders to let you know, here's the list of unclaimed rights. If there are any rights that you have claim to that are on that list, it's typically not that difficult to file an objection with the court, get that water right removed. If you file an objection, like I said, we'll have another public meeting, and that public meeting will be geared toward, here's what that list looks like, here's how you file an objection. Okay, so you don't need to remember all this right now, but we will make a list of any water rights of record that have not been claimed. We'll submit that to the court. There's a 90-day objection period. We'll come out and do another public meeting. and then we do a final summons. So again, we'll do another search to see if there's anybody we missed. Hopefully, with sending close to 19,000 mailings, hopefully we didn't miss anybody, but we'll search it again and notify anybody who has not received notice up to that point. Okay, and then we will work through those objections. Any objections that we receive on the list of unclaimed rights, we'll work through those. And then once those are all resolved, we will motion the court for a decree on that list of unclaimed rights. At that point, when the court decrees that list, that court decrees that all of those rights are abandoned. Okay? So they were not claimed, they are decreed abandoned, and it prohibits future claims not of record. So once that decree is done, then you can't file any more pre-statutory claims, as we would say. So again, I want to reiterate, if you have a water right, file your claim. Okay? If you're unsure, contact us. But that decree is the end of that second phase. So moving on to phase 3, this is what takes us the most amount of time. We investigate all of those claims that come in. So we will do file review, because we have files in our Salt Lake office. We have every document ever filed on a specific water right. We keep on our records and on our website. We scan them all, put them on our website. I'll show you how to access that in a little bit. But we will do a file review of all these. Then we'll reach out to, we'll reach out to the water right owner and try to coordinate to get a field review scheduled. We'll come out and field review the water right. And then after our initial evaluation, we will put together what's called a state engineer's recommendation. It looks very, very similar to a water user's claim. Basically what happens, you file your claim and say, this is what I'm claiming. We do our evaluation and we say, well, this is what we're going to recommend to the court. And I want to make sure everybody understands that SER, that state engineer's recommendation, it's a preliminary indicator sent to you as a courtesy saying, hey, here's, and we'll also include a memo with that document. The memo will explain our investigation, our evaluation. It'll say we did a field review on this date, talk to these people. This is why we are making this recommendation. If we got anything wrong, let us know. We supersede those and amend those when we need to. Anyway, so once we get those recommendations complete for all the water rights in the area, in the subdivision, we compile all of those into that book called the proposed determination. We submit that to the court and we notify all the water right owners. And then there's another 90-day objection period. Toward the start of that 90-day objection period, we'll come out, we'll do another public meeting. We'll explain what the proposed determination is, how to read it, where to find information in it, and how to file an objection if you disagree with anything in the proposed determination. Okay? And then at that point, the last step is resolve the objections, any objections that are filed, and motion the court for a decree on the proposed determination. I know this is a lot. Our anticipated timeline. So as I've said, July 10th, we will send out that notice to file claims. That's our planned date to mail those. That starts that 90-day claim filing period. July 16th is when we have the first help session scheduled. As I said, in that notice to file claims, it will give you the information for that help session. We're planning on adding a second. By November 8th, the 90-day period plus the extension period have passed. I'll talk about the extension period here in a second. So we'll start investigating those claims. And then we're hoping by May of 2026, we'll have the list of unclaimed rights done. You all can come out and see my smiling face again at another public meeting. Then hopefully by April 2027, we'll have the proposed determination done. And then hopefully by 2029, we'll be through any objections that we had, and we'll be able to get an interlocutory decree on that. So it is kind of a long, drawn out process, but that's our timeline for you. So I have a few slides here dedicated to frequently asked questions, and then we'll get into a Q&A session. one of the most common questions we get is, why isn't my name on this water user's claim or on this water right? So the county recorder's office is the office of record for title. And a lot of times people will update title with the county recorder's office, but they forget to update title with our office. So sometimes ownership is out of date. I'm going to start with that bottom bullet point, but if you're the successor of interest of a water right, you can still file a claim on that, even if it doesn't say your name. So a lot of times what people do is they'll receive a claim and it's like, oh, that's my dad's name. This water right is still in the name of my dad. I'm going to cross his name out, put my name on there. It's important to know you can file that claim so that water right does not end up on the list of unclaimed rights, but that water user's claim does not update title to that water right, okay? So if you want to update title, you need to submit a report of conveyance, a report of water right conveyance with our office. If you're in that boat, talk to us and we can help you with that. Next thing to cover is those extensions that I talked about. By law, if somebody requests an extension in writing to the state engineer's office, the state engineer says shall grant a 30-day exception or extension rather. But you need to submit that in writing within that 90-day claim filing window. Okay, you can send just an email to me to either of those email addresses there saying I'm so and so, and I need a 30-day extension to file my claim in this subdivision, okay? And then I'll send you an email back confirming that, but it needs to be within that 90-day claim filing window. So now one of the other most common questions we get is, will I lose my water right? So water users who are using their water right in conformance with the records on file have nothing to worry about as long as you file a claim, okay? As I've said, in statute, it does say if a water right or a portion of a water right has not been used within the past 7 years, it may be subject to forfeiture. The state engineer does not have the authority to forfeit a water right, but we'll go out and do our evaluation and we will make a recommendation to a court, and the court can declare that water right is forfeited or a portion of that water right. So we want people to use their water, okay? So if you're using your water and you have a water right, just file a claim. And if you have a water right that's not on our records, again, I know I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but it's important. Make sure you file a claim or you could be barred from future claims. A lot of people ask us, what happens to these forfeited water rights? I think I'm batting 1,000 getting the question, is the state gonna confiscate this water and auction it off? That's not gonna happen. The state engineer's office, the state of Utah, we don't buy and sell water rights. The state engineer is tasked with administering water rights. So what happens to the water that from forfeited water rights? So this is the only slide I did this, but this is exactly what the law says. I copied it verbatim and I'll read it to you. If in a judicial action, a court declares a water right forfeited, on the date on which the water right is forfeited, the right to beneficially use the water reverts to the public, and the water made available by forfeiture first satisfies other water rights in the hydrologic system in order of priority date, and second may be appropriated as provided in this title. It's important to know this area is closed to new appropriations. So that's why I have that first point underlined. Water rights that are not being used that may be subject to forfeiture, if they are declared forfeited, that water that those water rights used to have a call on, that water is made available to other existing water rights in the system, which if you think about it, that's already what's happening. If I have a water right on the river and I'm not using that water flows downstream to the next appropriator and is used by downstream water right holders, okay? So we're not taking water rights and auctioning them or selling them, anything like that, okay? So on that note, we'll take some questions. Before I take questions, as I've said, my staff will be available afterward to answer specific questions for your personal situation. So what I ask right now is that people limit their questions to general questions about the process that are not specific to their water right. And then after this Q&A, I'll do a website tour, and then we'll be available for more questions at the end. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay, and I'm going to repeat the questions if I forget, because there's people online. So the question is, where is the help session? I don't know off the top of my head. It will be, we can look it up for you if you want to stick around. But it will be on the notice to file claims document. Like in that mailing, it'll have the date, time, and location for that help session. Okay. Other questions? Okay, I'm hearing Spanish Fork Library on July 16th. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir. Okay, good question. So the question is, when was the last time that this process happened in this area? The answer is, it hasn't. There's areas nearby, bordering areas that have been adjudicated, but remember back to when I talked about why we adjudicate. The reason we adjudicate is to bring the pre-statutory claims onto the record. So we only adjudicate once. We publish once, and that's not going to change unless the laws are changed. That is how the law is written now. I will place an asterisk on that, because when we come through and adjudicate, sometimes there are things and objections that there's settlements or things that sometimes we do an addendum because we're like, oh, we missed this, or we had to stipulate to this to resolve an objection. So there may be an addendum, but that's probably in the future. Next question, sir. Yeah. Okay, so the question is, what triggered this process right now? So I talked about the court case that was expanded, right? What started the Utah Lake Jordan River general adjudication. And we've been working on that. What triggered it is just, we got a lot of work done over the past 10 years or so in the Salt Lake Valley. We got proposed determinations on the entire Salt Lake Valley. We've been working over the last several years on the Provo drainage, the Provo River drainage, and we're just moving south. So I think I saw, yes, sir. So the question is, was there a developer involved that got this started? And the answer is, so the answer is no, we didn't start this process because a developer told us to, if that was a question, but so no. Yes, sir. So the question is, what is the boundary of the adjudication? Okay, so it's area. So the question is, I think the question is, was the subdivision boundary generated by a developer? If that's a question, well, none of this has anything to do with a land developer or anything like that. We drew these boundaries based on boundaries that have been drawn in the past and trying to keep the hydrologic system whole as we, excuse me, as we subdivide. So we have a good picture when we adjudicate. We have the whole hydrologic picture when we're doing it, if that makes sense. Yes, sir. So my name is Chase McDonald. I'm the assistant state engineer over the adjudication section. Chase, Chase. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right here. Okay, so the question is, what is Area 51? Okay. Area 51 is where all the aliens are. No, so no, so Area 51, yeah, yes, sir. So Area 51, I will be honest, I don't know who came up with the numbers of the water right areas, but every any point in the state is within what we call a water right area, and we break it apart by region. So we have a representative from the regional office here who manages the Utah Lake Jordan River region. But Area 51 is it's the designator for the kind of southern Utah County area. Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah. So yeah, the question / comment is, you know, talk about how we subdivided Area 51 and what areas are we working in. So some of Area 51 has been subdivided for adjudication subdivisions a long time ago, and some of those efforts have been done. We recently subdivided the area kind of from Mapleton down to Santaquin that was unassigned from the adjudication standpoint. And so we subdivided that. We subdivided it based on hydrologic unit codes that come from the UGS. So like I said, we tried to divide it along hydrologic boundaries. Obviously, it's tough to draw hydrologic boundaries and make them all make sense. But that was what we tried to do. And right now, well, a couple months ago, we had this same public meeting in the Benjamin area. Now we're in Spanish Fort Mapleton. We also drew new boundaries that may commence in the next few years for Santaquin and Payson, Salem area. Yes, sir. Yeah, great question. The question is, okay, we have the subdivision boundary, but how do I know, you know, if my water right falls within that boundary? So I will pull up the adjudication, the water rights website, and I'll give you a tour. I'll show you our mapping system. I'll show you how to turn on the subdivision boundaries and zoom in and find a specific water right. I'll also show you on the water rights database where it will tell you there's a line item on each water right that tells you which subdivision it's a part of. And beyond that, maybe the easy answer is if you have a water right and you're like, I don't know if this is going to be included, give us a call and we'll look at it and let you know. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the question is, if you have shares in an irrigation company, do you have a water right? And the answer is no. So the company has shares, or sorry. Whoa. The company has a water right or multiple water rights that they issue shares based on those water rights. So they have the water rights, issue shares. A water share is not a water right. Okay. You do not, if all you have is a water share, you do not need to file a claim on your water share. That's correct. Yes, sir. Okay, so I had a hard time hearing you, but I think the question was, when we come out and do our field evaluation, are we going to require meters to be put on? Is that, and the answer is no. On a well, sorry, yes, on a well. And the answer is no. Through the adjudication process, we don't have any requirements. We don't require people to put meters on wells or anything else. Yeah, so the question is, what do we do during these field investigations, field evaluations? We will look at what is on our record. So we'll do a file review before we go out into the field. When we get out in the field, we will confirm the attributes of that water right. We'll confirm where's the point of diversion and is the point of diversion match up with our records? What are the beneficial uses? Is this water right being used as it is approved? Is it being used for its beneficial uses in its approved place of use? Those kinds of things. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay, great question. So the question is, if I have a well and I did not receive the paperwork, does that mean that I have a pre-statutory claim? And the answer is maybe. So it could, well, no, and I'll explain, I promise. So I can think of two scenarios in which that might be the case. Either number one, the ownership information is outdated, and so that mailing went to somebody else, which that's part of the reason we send notice to property owners as well. The other option, or the other case that maybe is, maybe you do have a pre-statutory claim that is not on the records. Come find one of us afterward. We'll pull it up on a map and we'll help you sort that out. Okay? Yes, sir. So the question is about priority dates, and the question is, so if a water right was established, basically the question was, if a water right has seniority, meaning it was appropriated before another water right, does that water right have, does it receive its water before others? The answer is yes. With groundwater, so the black and white answer is, on a stream, it's a lot easier to see where that water goes. So yes, if there's only so much water, if you are senior in priority to me, and we're both on a stream, and that stream doesn't produce enough to fulfill both of our water rights, and you're senior, you get your water before I get any. Groundwater, there's some, it's tougher. It's not as black and white with groundwater, but the answer is yes. If you'd like to talk more, come talk to me after. Okay, yes, sir. Okay, now we're getting into the fun stuff. We're getting into the weeds. So the question is, if there was maybe a change application filed on a water right and a new well was drilled, does that new well take priority? So I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to get into the weeds on that for this meeting, but there is a priority date of the underlying water right, and there is a priority date on the change application. For the purposes of this meeting, I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but I'm happy to talk to you afterward if you'd like. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the answer is, can you claim a deceased ancestor's water right? And that falls in the category of outdated ownership information. So if you are the predecessor, or sorry, the successor in interest, and you're still using that water right, yes, then all you need to do is you need to update title and file a claim. So the question is, what if we aren't using the water right? Then you probably, okay, so the question is, if a water right is not being used, can you claim it and sell it? And what I would say to that is, if a water right has not been used and is subject to forfeiture and somebody sells it, that will not change our evaluation, and that water right could be forfeited, and it could be very problematic for the buyer. That's what I'll say on that. I didn't quite hear you. So the question again is, if you have an ancestor's water right, can you claim it and sell it? And if you have a chain of title and you can update title to that water right, you can sell it. But like I said, if it's not being used, the fact that it's been sold is not going to change our evaluation. So can you sell it in good faith? I don't know. It's my answer to that is it'll be, if it hasn't been put to use and it's subject to forfeiture, it'll be problematic for the new buyer. can we sell it to the state? So the state does not buy and sell water rights. So the state would not buy your water right. Okay. For the sake of time, we have, like I said, we have a bunch of staff here to answer your questions. I want to get through this website tour. I'll take 1 or 2 questions online, and then we'll do the website tour. Can you tell me what it is? Okay, that's a great question, and I'm very happy to clarify that. So the question was, if there's a change application on a water right that is approved but not perfected, does that person need to file a claim? So if the underlying water right is perfected, but there's an approved and unperfected change application on it, yes, the underlying water right is still perfected and needs to have a claim filed on it. I know I'm throwing a lot of technical terms out. So if somebody's in that situation, ask us. We're happy to work through it. Is there another question online? Okay. Yeah, so the question is, how will strawberry water, and we'll extend that to other just irrigation companies at large, how will they be handled in the adjudication? So most, I don't know if I want to say most, but like Strawberry Water Users Association and Springville Irrigation Company, their points of diversion for most of their water rights are outside of this adjudication boundary, and they have already gone through this process. But so a lot of those will not be adjudicated because they've already been adjudicated. But the way that shares in irrigation companies may play into our evaluation is if a private water right is used in a supplemental nature, like a private water right and irrigation shares are used together for common uses, then that may play into our evaluation. If you're in that case, talk to us. But on that note, I'm gonna jump into the website tour, and then we'll break apart. If there's questions about the website tour, I'll answer those, and we'll break into just individual questions. So this might be tricky because I'm at a weird angle here. But here's our website. It is waterrights.utah.gov. As you see in the top right, it says staff login. I am not logged into the website, so everything that I show you right now is what you would see if you got on our website, okay? So first, if you just scroll down on our homepage, you can go to a map search. This will pull up our mapping server, and you got to bear with me. It's weird things happen when you try to zoom in on a laptop on this. So we'll zoom into this area, and over here on the right side, I'm going to turn on adjudication books. There you see the Spanish Fork Mapleton Subdivision boundary. Okay. So if you notice over here on the right, we have these different map layers, and I just turned on that adjudication books. By default, this points of diversion is turned on. Okay, so we're going to zoom in a little bit more till some points of diversion pop up. Okay, so each of these points represent a point of diversion for a water right. These red ones are underground water wells. I don't see any, but if there's any blue ones up there. Blue ones represent, let's go to the mouth of the canyon. How about that? These blue ones represent surface points of diversion, okay? So there's a few different kinds of points of diversion, and they have different icons. This one I think is, yeah, point of return. But anyway, the point in showing you this, you can get to this map search from our homepage, and then you can go in, and I'm just gonna pick one here. So this water right here, 51-3602. If you click on the icon, it pulls up just a small window with a summary of that right. If you want to go in and look at more details, you can actually click the water right number there, and it pulls this up. And there's this red banner. It says this water right is involved in an active adjudication. Scroll down here, you can see if there's changes. You can see who the owner of record is. This is where I was talking about. It shows the proposed determination book, so it shows you what area that it is set to be included in. It shows you the source of information, the status, all this kind of stuff. Keep going. There's the point of diversion, the beneficial uses, all this kind of stuff. So you can see all that information right there. Another very, very important thing, this tab right here that says scan documents. So every document that we have on the file in Salt Lake is scanned, and you can pull it up from home. You can just pull these up. You can download them all. You can print them off if you want to. You can sort by date and scroll through and look at all of these. So this one has a change application on it, has a bunch of documents on it. But that's how you find those scan documents. If you click this button right here, the proposed determination book, it takes you to the adjudication status page. Okay. And so this has information about the civil number, the court case that started the Utah Lake Jordan River general adjudication. Scroll down, it has the court documents, like the court orders, the amended court order. Keep going down, and here's like if I click this pulls up that summons packet that we sent to everybody. So all of that information is on here. What I really wanted to show you on this page, I'll pull it back up. I told you that the presentation slides are uploaded there. So if you scroll down, there's this initial public meeting date, and you can click that. And that pulls up the slides that I just presented to you. So all the information that you saw on the screen is right there. Let me make sure, see what else I want to cover. All right. I'm going to go back to our home page. So over here on the left, you can go programs, scroll down to adjudications, or you can scroll down here. I can't see from here, but click adjudication. This pulls up general adjudication information. There's a video that kind of talks through the process. You can go down and go to active adjudications here, and Spanish Fork Mapleton will be right here. You can click this, and it pulls up a map with all the points of diversion turned on, and it should zoom in to the extents of the boundary. Good, it didn't make me a liar, so it did that. You can also click on this subdivision number, and remember, I know I'm going through stuff quickly, but this meeting's being recorded. You can go on and find this and follow along, or give us a call. We can help you find all this information. But if you click this button right here, it goes to what we call the PD book manager, the proposed determination book manager. This is how we track all of our work. So if you have a water right, you can go in and click on it here. This will bring up that same water right page. It'll also have kind of the status updates. So you see these different colors up here. You know, notice submit claims served. None of them have that because we haven't sent that yet. When you file a claim, we will come in here and we will mark it that a claim has been filed, so you can kind of track our progress that way if you want. And then the last thing I want to show you is this file a water user's claim button. So as I said, we will be mailing out water user claims to everybody, whether they're pre-filled or blank. But if you would prefer to generate your own claim, you can go to, you know, if I could, you know, search for any water right number here and display it, and then there's this file a water user's claim button. before I click into it, make sure you understand that clicking this button will help you. It's a program that will help you populate a water user's claim. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have the ability to file water user claims online. So it can help you fill it out and print it, and then you can sign it and send it to us. Yes, ma'am. Okay, good question. So the question is, if you click this button, does that start your 90 days? No, it does not. But if you click this file a water user's claim button, it will pull all the information. You can change it however you want to. It makes you put in a phone number, and I know some people are apprehensive about putting a phone number on their claims, but if you put contact information on there, it really helps us contact you to schedule those field reviews. Just keep that in mind. So as I said, it will generate this water user's claim here. Okay. So I think that's all I wanted to show on the website. Do we have any questions about the website specifically before we close it down? Yes, sir. I can't hear you at all. So I'm trying to read your lips. I can't hear you, but I think the question was, if you're a shareholder in an irrigation company, how do you see if they filed a claim? Was okay. So yeah, you can go on that PD Book Manager page that I showed you and find any water rights of the company that you own shares in and see if they filed a claim. So any other questions about the website specifically? Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah. So from the home page here, if you scroll down, there's this map search button right here. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the question is, if you go in and update the contact information to the correct contact information, will you receive a pre-filled water user's claim? You would need to contact us. We can put you in as a claimant, and then it will send it to you, but you would need to actually update title to do that. But come talk to us, and we can figure that out. All right. At this time, I think, Andrew, are there any more questions online? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out. My staff are located around these tables. I'll be up here if you have any questions. But on that note, we'll end the recording.